Yachaya vitarayo ekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. Sorry, is there somebody doing the translation?
Yes, I think it's Alka Mataji who has to do the translation. Is Alka Mataji there in the group right now?
Sorry, that's me, Prabhuji. I'm doing the Sanskrit.
Okay. Sorry, Yashoda Priya Mataji. Let's wait for Yashoda Priya Mataji for 2 minutes then.
I'm just calling her. Give me 1 minute, please.
Okay, Mataji. Okay, thank you.
Shall we just continue reciting? She didn't answer. Can somebody, if somebody recites in English, please?
Can I do Mataji?
Yes, and then if Yashoda Priya Mataji joins, she will let us know.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So who is reciting now, English?
I'm reciting, Prabhuji. My name is Seema.
Okay, thank you, Seema Mataji. Please, let's start. Verse 1, English, please. Sanskrit is already spoken, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Arjun said, "Oh Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial?"
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannyasa Karma Yogascha Nishreyasa Karamubhau Tayostu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate.
The personality of Godhead replied, "The renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotional service is better than a renunciation of work."
Nyasi yo na dveshti na kankshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate.
One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. O mighty arm Arjun.
Sankhya yoga prathau bala pravandanti na panditaha ekamapyasitha samya ubhayodvanti te phalam.
Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the result of the both.
Yat sankhye prapyate sthanam tad yogairapi gamyate ekam sankhyam cha yogam cha ya pashyati sa pashyati.
One who knows that the position reached by the means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are.
Sanyasastu mahabaho dukhamapyamayogataha yoga yukto munir brahma nachirainati gacchati.
Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay.
Yoga-yukto vishuddhatma vijitatma vijidintriya sarvabhutatma bhutatma karvanyapi na lipyate.
One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled.
Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavet pashyan shrunvan sprushan jingnam shanan gachan swapan shvanan pralapan grihnam dinishman nishyasati indriyanindriyashritu vartant iti garayana.
The person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them.
ब्रह्मण्यादाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाभ्यसा.
One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results onto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by the sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water.
कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा वा मुच्युदये.
The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses only for the purpose of purification.
युक्तः कर्मफलं त्यक्त्वा शान्तिमाप्नोति नैष्ठिकीम् अयुक्तः कामकारेण फले सक्तो निबध्यते.
The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled.
सर्वकर्माणि मनसा सन्न्यस्यास्ते सुखं वशी नवद्वारे पुरे देहि नैव कुर्वन्न कारयन्.
When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done.
न कृत्रित्वन कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते.
The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature.
न दत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैवं सकृतं विभु अज्ञानिवावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः.
Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge.
ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानं येषान्नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम्.
When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime.
तद्बुद्ध्ययत्सदात्माना तन्निष्ठास्तपरायणाः गच्छन्त्यपन्नुरुवृत्तिं ज्ञानिनी धूर्तकल्मषा.
When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuse are all fixed in Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings through complete knowledge and thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation.
विद्या विनय संपन्ने ब्राह्मणे गविहस्तिनि शुनि चैव श्वपाके च पंडिता समदर्शिनः.
The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned, a gentle Brahman, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater, outcast.
इहैव तैजित संगो येषाम् साम्ये स्थितं मनः निर्दोषं हि समं ब्रह्म तस्माद् ब्रह्मणि ते स्थितता.
Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity have already conquered the conditions of birth and death. They are flawless like Brahman, and thus they are already situated in Brahman.
न पृह्येत् प्रियं प्राप्य नो द्विजेत प्राप्य च प्रियं स्थिरबुद्धिर्समुद्धो ब्रह्मविद् ब्रह्मणि स्थितः.
A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the signs of God, is already situated in transcendence.
बाह्यस्पर्शेष्वसक्तात्मा द्विन्द्वत्यात्मनि यः सुखं सः ब्रह्मयोगयुक्तात्मा सुखमक्षमनुष्यते.
Such a liberated person is not attached to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme.
ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयो न एव ते आद्यन्त्ववन्त कौन्तेय तेषु रमते बुधः.
An intelligent person does not take part in the source of misery, which are due to contact with material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them.
शक्नोति हैव यः सूडून् प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणाम् कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः.
Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the arts of material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world.
Yonta sukhontararamad Tathantar jyotiraivayaha Sayogi brahma nirvanam Brahma bhuto digacchati.
One whose happiness is within, uh, who is active and rejoice within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme.
Labhante brahma nirvanam Rishayah kshinkalmashaha Chinnadvaitayataatmanah Sarvabhutahite rataha.
Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme.
Kama krodha vimuktanam Yatinam yatachetasam Abhito brahma nirvanam Vartate viditatmanam.
Those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self realized, self disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future.
Sparshan kritva bahirbahyaan Chakshurshaivantare bhruvoh Pranapanau samau kritva Nasabhyantaracharini Yate nindriyamanobuddhir Muni mokshana parayan Vigate chabaya krodho Yah sada mukta eva saha.
Shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between the two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breaths within the nostrils, and thus controlling the mind, senses, and intelligence, the transcendentalist aiming at liberation becomes free from desire, fear, and anger. One who is always in this state is certainly liberated.
Bhoktaram yagna tapasam sarvalokamaheshwaram sahridam sarvabhutanam gnatva mam shantim pruchati.
A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all the sacrifice and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alka Mataji and Meena Mataji. Wonderful recitation. I think there are some compliments in the chat as well. So thank you very much. Today we are reading verse number 8 and 9 of the same chapter 5 that we have been reciting. And there are two verses together for which the translation and purport has been put together here by Srila Prabhupada. So we'll just read this verse and discuss these verses a little bit in depth. न एव किंचित करोमिति युक्तो मन्येत तत्त्ववित् पाश्यान् शृण्वन् स्पर्शन् जिघ्रन् अश्नन् गच्छन् सपन् स्वसन् प्रलपन् विसर्जन् ग्रहणन् उन्मिषन् निमिषन्नपि इन्द्रियाणि इन्द्रियार्थेषु वर्तन्त इति धारयन्. Na, never. Eve, certainly. kinchit, everything, karomi, I do, iti, thus. Yukta, engaged in the divine consciousness, manyata, thinks, tattva, with one who knows the truth, passion, seeing, shanavan, hearing, sparshan, touching, jigaran, smelling, ashnan, eating, gachan, going, swapan, dreaming, swasan, breathing, pralapan, talking, visarjan, giving up, grinan, accepting, unmission, opening, nimisham, closing, api, in spite of indriyani, the senses, indyartheshu, in sense gratification, vartante, let them to be so engaged, iti, thus, dharayan, considering. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. A person in a divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening, closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with the objects, that he is aloof from them. I'm going to request to mute. Mutate someone where the sound was coming in the background. Purport: a person in Krishna consciousness is pure in his existence, and consequently, he has nothing to do with any work which depends upon five immediate and remote causes: the doer, the work, the situation, the endeavor, and fortune. Thus, this is because he is engaged in the loving transcendental service of Krishna. Although he appears to be acting with his body and senses, he is always conscious of his actual position, which is spiritual engagement. In material consciousness, senses are engaged in sense gratification, but in Krishna consciousness, senses are engaged in the satisfaction of Krishna's senses. Therefore, Krishna conscious person is always free, even though he appears to be engaged in affairs of the senses. Activities such as seeing, hearing, or actions of the senses meant for receiving knowledge, whereas moving, speaking, evacuating are actions of the senses meant for work. A Krishna conscious person is never affected by the action of the senses. He can perform any act except in the service of the Lord, because he knows that he is the eternal servitor of the Lord. Om Jnanam Timirindasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaha Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapad Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Visamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhaivacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. A person in divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all, because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening, closing his eyes, he always knows that only material senses are engaged with the objects, and that he is aloof from them. There's also a very interesting verse in the same chapter, verse number 14, which is going to come after this. I'll just open that verse for all of us. And in that verse, Krishna has again spoken the same theme of how the individual is not responsible for the actions or the results. It's here. Na kartattam na karmani lokasya shrajati prabhu na karma phala samayogam sambhavastu pravartate. Embodied spiritual master of the city of his body does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So it seems like a mysterious thing that Krishna is speaking about here. And of course, it's a mystery which is getting uh, opened up in the discussions between Arjuna and Krishna. And here, a very deep and very unknown, unobvious sort of knowledge is being disclosed, which cannot be seen otherwise. Um, it's like one is in the waters, and if one decides to not act, what is the result? The result will be that he is going to drown. Whereas if one decides to move his hands and legs and start to swim, there's all possibility that person can save himself. I was thinking about this analogy when I was thinking about how there is an action in inaction, and in action there is an action. So if somebody is not going to do any action, which means inaction, when he's in the water, then what is the result? He'll drown. So inaction will result into achieving nothing, rather you drown yourself. Whereas the action, which means the swimming, act of swimming, will save that person. Therefore, the action in Krishna consciousness is going to save you, which is people thinking will be achieved by inaction. Hmm? Inaction means not doing any activities in the world, or maybe occupational activities. If I leave them, then I will be renouncing myself from the work. But that will not lead us to the state of inaction. Rather, working our senses, just like being in the water, you're trying to swim, and then that action of swimming will really help you cross over the material ocean. Now, this life, this material world, even in this purport, if we read further through, is compared to the material ocean. This whole Bhavasagar, it is said Bhavasagar, material ocean. In this material ocean, the living entity which is being embodied in a particular type of body, whether it's a human body or it's an animal body or any other species of 4.5, 8.4 million of species of the bodies, living entity is going through the waves of anxieties. And sometimes he feels himself happy, and sometimes he feels himself very grieved. And in any situation, in every situation, he's always being carried forward in the uh, river of time. In the river of time, he's being carried forward by the waves of anxieties. Now, these waves of anxieties are coming in different ways and forms. Whoever one is, doesn't matter. One time, Srila Prabhupada was asked about, in context of being rich and poor, Srila Prabhupada mentioned, it is being given in the book by His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj, I'll build you a temple. He mentioned that, or in the book by Guru Das, by his example, either of the two books, Srila Prabhupada says that rich or poor, whether water is in the golden pot or water is in the silver pot. Once it is in the mouth, the taste of the water will be the same. So the taste of this material world, which means anxieties, which means sudden happiness, sudden griefs, which all comes by the contact of the senses with the sense objects, will come equally to everybody. The illusion of becoming materially very comforted will take away the anxieties is a greater illusion. Even then, even greater than the fact that one who thinks that he's okay in any condition, he's much better situated than one who is trying to acquire these material possessions, and he's living this illusion that one day he'll become very happy. But this material world is dukhalema shashvatam. It is just dukkhalaya. It's a mountain of miseries which are occurring to us in various forms. So in this chapter 5, 8, 9, it's talked about here the working senses, and activities such as seeing and hearing are actions of the senses meant for receiving knowledge, whereas moving, speaking, evacuating are actions of the senses meant for work. So all these senses are here, and all of these senses, even let's say I'm very comfortably situated, but then I have so much of material anxieties that people have high blood pressure, they get strokes, they get heart attacks, all kinds of miseries, which is at the platform of mind or at the platform of body. It can happen to anybody at any time. And people think that it is by them that everything is happening. If that is the case, then why suddenly somebody gets an attack of certain disease and then he's implicated? He's not able to move his hand or leg, and all the control is taken away from that person. So that's what we just studied in this particular verse, that embodied spirit who thinks to be the master of the city of his body, he's not the master. He's experiencing everything because of the resultant reactions of the activities done by the bodies before and after. But the moment he aloof himself from the body, then he is safe. Now, going back to the verse, is mentioned here, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving, it appears that Krishna conscious activity or inaction, one word, and then in between an action, which means you are acting. You can't not act when you are there in the material world. Activity must happen. If you don't want to act, still you'll be forced to act by your own nature. That nature will bring you out. That is the modes of material nature are designed in such a manner that one cannot stay without acting. He may stop his physical activities for some time, but mentally he's always active, always active. Even on the deathbed, people are thinking about their past and the future, all sorts of anxieties. The action is happening somewhere in the working senses or the knowledge senses. But this action cannot be stopped. Now, the fact that action cannot be stopped, so what are we trying to stop? What are we trying to stop? We're trying to stop the desire to enjoy the result of these actions. If the desire of enjoying through the senses, this is the central theme of Bhagavad Gita, that one has to stop the propensity or tendency to try and enjoy through the senses, because that's what is the source of misery. And in that miserable situation, one cannot be happy at all. And therefore, in Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada has written this beautiful letter to Gurudas. This is the book by his example, by His Grace Gurudas Prabhu. This is a letter written from Los Angeles in 24 December 1968. I'll read to some parts of this letter. My dear Gurudas, after giving his blessings, etc., I'm reading from paragraph 3rd of this letter. Regarding your analogy of sowing Krishna conscious seeds, I may inform you there's a Bengali proverb, Sabore moya phale. This means that fruits like chestnuts and pomegranates or similar other valuable fruits and nuts take some time to be fructified. So any good thing comes in our possession after hard struggle and endeavor. So Krishna consciousness is the greatest of all good fruits. We must therefore have necessary endurance and enthusiasm to get the result. We shall never be disappointed when things are presented in reversed order. Anyway, your honest labor is now coming to be fructified. Always depend upon Krishna and go on working. Prabhupada is saying, and go on working with enthusiasm, patience, and conviction. And now he's going to tell what is it that you'll achieve. He's saying here further, our policy of Krishna consciousness is very nice. We are offering people good family life with faithful wives in Krishna consciousness. Similarly, able husbands in Krishna consciousness, so that the younger generation will be happy to have nice home, nice wife, nice food, nice dress, nice philosophy of life, nice culture, and ultimately nice Krishna. So this movement is the nicest of all other movements. Simply, the minister should be ready, intelligent, honest, and sincere. Then surely Krishna consciousness movement will be accepted by all considerate men and women. Thank you again for your letter, and I hope this finds you in good health. Now, I particularly chose to read this letter in the context of this verse, that Srila Prabhupada is nowhere inhibiting any kind of activities. Rather, he is propagating that you do activities, but you do in such a way that you please Krishna. In that, you can have your family life, you can have a nice husband, nice wife, nice home, nice dress, nice things to eat, nice prasadam, festivals, and everything that is joyful can be performed in Krishna consciousness. And that is what Srila Prabhupada is propagating this over here. And I would like to read this particular text of Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 11. In Canto 11, Chapter 11, verse number 34 and 41 are spoken by Lord Krishna to Uddhava. Uddhava is asking to Krishna that what are your devotees like? And Krishna is giving this elaborate answer, and I'm reading just one of the paragraph here, or one of the two of the shlokas or paragraphs. Sorry, it's text 34 to 41, multiple shlokas, but beautiful shlokas. And we can see that how Srila Prabhupada has given us a perfect program of Krishna consciousness as desired by Lord Krishna, him being a very pure devotee of the Lord. So Krishna is saying, my dear Uddhava, one can give up false pride and prestige by engaging in the following devotional activities. You see, devotion is not sentimental performance of mind or mental gymnastics just to please oneself. It is a very important point for us to note that devotion is a verb, it's an action. Therefore, action in action. That is what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, action in action. If we don't act, then we'll not be able to perform what Krishna is saying here, the devotional activities. I'm reading further now. One may purify oneself by seeing, touching, worshipping, serving, and offering prayers of glorification and obeisances to my form as the deity and to my pure devotees. One should also glorify my transcendental qualities and activities, hear with love and faith the narrations of my glories, and constantly meditate on me. One should offer to me whatever one acquires, and accepting oneself as my eternal servant, one should give oneself completely to me. One should discuss my birth and activities and enjoy life. Krishna is saying, and enjoy life by participating in festivals such as Janmashtami, which glorifies my pastimes. In my temple, one should also participate in festivals and ceremonies by singing, dancing, playing musical instruments, and discussing me with other Vaishnavas. One should observe all the regularly celebrated annual festivals by attending ceremonies, pilgrims, pilgrimages, and making offerings. So we can see how all these activities are there. Every individual in the society would like to sing, dance, play music, etc. But they would do so in a very different environment for a very different purpose to achieve a very different goal, which is how do I satisfy my senses? Whereas devotee of Krishna, they are performing the same activities, music, dance, playing musical instruments, and eating prashadam, but for the satisfaction of Krishna. But in turn, as you water the roots of a plant, all the leaves will become green. So when we serve Krishna by all our senses and intelligence and all the resources, as Krishna is saying here, if we give that to Krishna, then the byproduct of such sacrifices is that we become very happy being the part and parcel of Krishna. One should observe all the regularly celebrated annual festivals by attending ceremonies, pilgrimages, and making offerings. Then he further says one should also observe religious vows such as Ekadashi, take initiation by the procedures mentioned in the Vedas, Pancharatrika, and others. So we are following Pancharatrika Vidhi in Gaudiya Vaishnava. Similar literatures, one should faithfully and lovingly support the installation of my deities. And individually or in cooperation with others, one should work for the construction of Krishna conscious temples in cities, as well as flower gardens, fruit gardens, and special areas to celebrate my pastimes. One should consider oneself to be humble servant without duplicity, and thus should help to clean the temple, which is my home. First, one should sweep and dust thoroughly, and then one should further cleanse with water, cow dung. Having dried the temple, one should sprinkle scented water, decorate the temple with mandalas, act like my servant. Devotee should never advertise his devotional activities, therefore, his service will not be the cause of false pride, etc. So, we see that how in this verse, what Krishna is explaining that a devotee should can be seen doing the similar activities as a materialistic. However, because he is doing for a higher purpose, which is described here in Canto 13, Canto 11, chapter 11, and verse number 34 to 41, we just read, this is how a devotee's life is. And this kind of renunciation, which means renouncing from the desire to enjoy the material facilities for oneself, this kind of renunciation and desiring to serve the Lord and his devotees is the actual renunciation. That is, Krishna is saying here in 6.1, if you see, Krishna is saying, Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who work as he is obligated in the renounced order of life, he is a true mystic, not who lights no fire and performs no duties. So one has to light the fire, means one has to perform the sacrifices, means one has to perform action in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, that action will become the cause of his bondage or entanglement in this material world. Here, in another lecture, Srila Prabhupada is talking about this, and I would like to read a part of it. Srila Prabhupada is talking about action in action. So Prabhupada says, action, just like you are active, you are working. You all Krishna conscious devotees, you're also working. You're not sitting idly, but it is in action. In action in this sense that it is not producing any reaction. It has no reaction. For other, those who are not acting in Krishna consciousness, they are also busy, but they're producing their reactions, you see. And in another room conversation, Srila Prabhupada talks about the same thing He's saying, therefore, in the action, if the action is liberated, one who's engaged in such action, that action is also, that person is also liberated. He's giving an example of rod. He's saying just like the same example, rod, when it is burning, it is fire, it is no more rod. So by the action, one is liberated or conditioned. When the action is liberated, then the soul is also liberated. When the action is conditioned, he also continue to be conditioned. What does that mean? When the action is conditioned, means conditioned by the modes of nature. And the modes of nature means driven by the self-interest, kam, krodh, lobh, mad, moha, matsarya. If action is driven by these self-interest, not self-interest, rather materialistic interest, then they are conditioned actions leading to conditioned state of life. Whereas when the action is liberated, when the action is performed in Krishna consciousness, that is to please Krishna, to please the devotees of the Lord, not with a desire to enjoy, but to give the enjoyment to Krishna, then that action leads to the liberated stage. This is what is mentioned here. Finally, this particular verse, which is taken from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This verse is taken from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.187. It says, Ihayas harirdasse karmana manasagira. This word, karmana manasagira. You may have heard this before. Karmana manasagira. Nikhilatsu api avasthasu jivan mukta sa uchyate. It's saying, Jivan Mukta Sauchate, liberated person, Jivan Mukta. Who is that person? Sauchate. Who is that person? A person who acts in the service of Krishna. Iha yas Harer Dasya. He's Hari Da. He's Das of Hare. A person who acts in service of Krishna. How is he performing action? Body, mind, and intelligence. Karmana, Manasa, Gira. And the words is a liberated person. So body, mind, intelligence, and words is a liberated person, even within the material world. So Srila Prabhupada is elaborating on this point. One should come to understand my senses are meant to serve the master of the senses, Rishikesha. Master of the senses sitting within everyone's heart. The Lord says, Sarvasya cham hridisannishto matasmritar jnanam apohanam cha, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness, etc. So I'll take one more quick anecdote here from the book, which is I'll Build You a Temple by Giriraj Swami Maharaj. So he's in Bombay, and in Bombay arrives Ambrish Prabhu, the Ford Motor Company, Ambrish Prabhu. And as he arrives, Giriraj Maharaj was facing a lot of difficulties in talking to some of the top-notch businessmen and the rich people of Bombay, and so Giriraj Maharaj was making life members and collecting donations to build a temple in Bombay, and perfect action in Krishna consciousness under the direction of his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. So he's writing this piece here. And I'm going to read from the book. It's a very interesting piece. Once I came into Prabhupada's room when Ambrish was speaking to him, Prabhupada, he was asking, why does Giriraj have to go out every day and collect like this? I will just build a temple for you. But Prabhupada said, no. Then Ambrish got dysentery, and on the morning walks on Juhu Beach, he would see planes flying over, going to America, and think, oh my God, get me on one of those planes. When Ambrish had been in Juhu for 2 weeks, Srila Prabhupada inquired, how are you feeling now? Are you all right? And Ambrish replied, I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling well today. Are you taking yogurt? Prabhupada asked, and told a devotee, give him khichdi and yogurt. He won't eat yogurt, Harikesh responded. Ambrish said, I eat it mixed with Sat Isabgol, so phylum husk. Then Prabhupada says, take yogurt with black pepper and salt. So then Prabhupada is speaking to Ambrish Prabhu about Vyavasatmika Buddha Shloka. I'll skip this one piece here. So I'll come to this piece. Before Amrish left Bombay, he had a serious meeting with Prabhupada about his future. Prabhupada told him that he wanted him to work. I'll repeat this line. Prabhupada told him that he wanted Amrish Prabhu to work. Almost all the devotees in ISKCON at that time were full-time. They lived in the temple and were engaged in serving the mission. But to Ambarish, Prabhupada said that he wanted people to see that one could be a devotee and still be a responsible member of society. Ambarish asked Prabhupada, must I work with the Ford Motor Company? No, Prabhupada replied, that is your choice, but you should do some work. People should see that you're doing some work. If I'm working, Ambarish inquired, what will I do for association, Prabhupada? And Prabhupada then said, if while you're working, you are thinking, I'm doing this for Krishna, that will be your association. So this is what I wanted to read. That Srila Prabhupada is given a perfect formula of action in action, inaction in action. And if we devotees can perform our day-to-day activities, which means we can swim, we swim through the days of anxieties and nights of anxieties of this material life, and somehow continue to work in Krishna consciousness in the devotees association, then our lives can reach perfection. The perfection of the type which is mentioned in this verse here, a person in divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, moving, eating, etc., he always knows that only material senses are engaged with the objects. He's aloof from them. And that way, one could achieve perfect realization of Krishna consciousness, even when one is in the material body. So with this, I'll just close this discussion here and invite if there are any questions or comments on this particular verse or from anywhere else. Hare Krishna. Would anybody like to share their thinking or would like to quote anything? Please do so. We have around 3, 4, 5 minutes with us.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just thought that tonight's lecture was full of rich thoughts that you shared with us. It's absolute, so rich. You know, we can't even pinpoint anything. Well, I can't anyway, pinpoint anything wrong with it, because it's very clear, and the advice is really, really rich with goodness.
Thank you. So somehow or the other, if we continue to hear and read from Bhagavad Gita, and at least we would, at least the least we would know is that we are living a life full of illusion on the bodily platform, and there's a way out. The realization of this, that we are in illusion in itself, is the key to get out of this illusion. But many times when we are living our lives, even though as devotees, practicing devotees, we get caught into the modes of nature and we start living that simulated life. And we start feeling sometimes that we are the bodies, and we start chasing those results which are may not be very noble in terms of Krishna conscious. Rather, There might be something that we need to do for our lives, and we, in that whole rut of life, we might just forget the goal and objective. So these shlokas, this knowledge from Bhagavad Gita is giving us a deeper insight into how do we live life. Prabhupada told Amrish Prabhu that you constantly think that you're working for Krishna. And how would he think that he's working for Krishna? Now we understand how much wealth he invested in building up Chandrodaya Mandir in Mayapur in West Bengal, India, and how he has utilized his wealth in propagating the mission of Krishna consciousness. And we can see that he's constantly thinking about the construction of that temple, constantly thinking 24/7. He's personally going to the cities and countries to collect funds for building up this temple. And many times we have met him on the Zoom call, and we see that how 24/7 he's so engaged in the activity. So all the activities which were coming from his youth to up till now are all purified and become Krishna conscious, although they were already, but it has become very obvious now that how a Krishna conscious person is living his day-to-day life in such a way that he can attain complete perfection.
It's always it amazes me to think about the movement being so full of encouraging people to be happy and joyful with the activities. Every activity is joyful. And I mean, when I go to the temple and people look at me as though I'm mad, really, because I often get up and dance and I sing with the kirtans, and I don't even care what people think, because there's something about it that Krishna is encouraging me to do, and I feel it, and it's amazing. So I'm so glad it's been clarified and qualified in many of your sentences tonight, how we are free to enjoy so much of in the movement, the company, the music, the prasadam, the freedom of just taking and enjoying, and then we forget about giving. And this is so clear how it is so freely available to us.
Thank you.
It's so loving. Yeah.
Lifestyle. Prabhupada has given us complete lifestyle for
Yeah.
Krishna consciousness. Thank you, Julie Mataji, for sharing your wonderful realizations. There's something on the chat I'll read through. Surabhi Mataji, Danvat Pranam. Yes, I am on the first stage, realizing everything is empty and illusion. Can't understand all of this, but yes, very profound perspective in life. So as we keep on hearing, every single day, our conviction and realization will become stronger, and our clarity will come. The illusion will break. The process is that of hearing, and those who have heard for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, they are also able to see furthermore. They could see much more, but now they can see even more. So there's it's huge, it's in depth, and there's no boundaries that how much you can see. Ultimately, one has to see the spiritual world, which is beyond illusions, and this is possible by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, specifically mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, that the spiritual world will be televised in the heart of pure devotees. Televised, it will be telecasted inside the heart. You can see everything crystal clear by the eyes of your mind, in the vision of your heart. That is how powerful this particular process is. Namrata Mataji, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, wonderful message. Okay. Surbi Mataji, true, very different view on happiness, very unique. True, thank you. Okay. So thank you for being with me, all of you, and helping me to purify myself by talking about Krishna consciousness through the pages of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We'll finish our session here. Vanchakalparubhyascha
Shya Kripa Sindhu Devasya Patitanam
Vaishnavi
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavi
Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Hare Hare
Prabhupada ki jai.
Ki
Gaur
Jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Krishna
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhu.
Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you.
everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Yes, Hare Krishna. Hare
Thank
Bo.
you, Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
This is a beautiful picture of Krishna playing his flute. Wonderful.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.